Hello, welcome to another Unity game dev video. I'm working on that snake game again, and I added a small little feature that I thought I'd show off in a quick video. So let's just jump into the game. Let's actually maximize it. Okay. That different following script that I was working on before, I implemented that into the other project that I showed off before, so now that's working here. I added this new system, or this new feature, where if you hold down the mouse button, it zooms in into this little alternate perspective. And then when you unclick it, it zooms out, and you can just switch between them on the fly. So I think that looks pretty interesting. So I'm going to jump into the script and show you how it's working. Actually, let me show you in the inspector first. It's just this one camera, and it's lerping between the positions of the overhead to the almost first-person perspective. So, in the overhead position, it is place the camera at the position of the target for the camera plus a vector 3 offset right here. So it's just placing it there and then moving it away right at the start. For the first person perspective, I have a forward camera position and a camera target. And the forward camera position is set to the first index of that body part array, so it's always going to be right there. And the camera target, I believe, is just slightly above that head object. So this green debug ray is showing the camera's perspective towards the target. So now that it's in the overhead, it's shooting the ray down. When it's down there, it's just shooting it forward. That you could see right there in the top view. Now if I go into the inspector for the camera object, these ray distance and these arrays in here are actually for that viewing obstruction occlusion script that I showed off before, where I can show right here down here, if I go behind an object, it turns semi-transparent. I had some issues with that recently, but I refixed it to work with the new scripts, but there it is. And if I go into the script for the camera, I have for that switching perspective, that is being accessed by a public enumeration that's set to overhead or forward, and then a public instance of that enumeration type set for the controls. So the enumeration is controls. There's two types, overhead and forward, and I have a public control, and that's the one that's going to be currently set to, so the current controls. And right here, it is changing the position and changing the target, and then it is just changing that enum value to either forward or back, forward or overhead. And you can actually see that in the inspector on the right when it switches. It says overhead right here. But if I click, it changes the forward. Unclick, it's overhead. The way I used to do this when I was first learning some of the data types, I would have bools like there would be an overhead and a forward true or false statement, and if the overhead became true, then the forward would become false, and vice versa. But it obviously works a lot better if you learn how to use enums to make it a lot more efficient. So I thought that was a nice little interesting thing to add in there. See, it's switching between the two positions. And you can see right here that it is just it's just lerping between those depending on what the enum value is set to, and if you're holding down the mouse button. So that's it. So I realized after rendering the video and I was about to post it that I didn't show how the controls change for the different perspectives. The enumerations were titled controls, but I didn't show why. So as you can imagine, if I am in this perspective and I switch to the first person controls, it's gonna need to be controlled differently. So what's happening here is that I have two varying control schemes. So when I go into this kind of first person perspective, when I hold left, the head veers left. If I hold right, it veers right. And if I hold forward, it accelerates. But I wouldn't want it to accelerate when I press W if I am in this perspective. I would want it to go up. So the enumerations are actually for switching between those control schemes, and I'm going to show you that in the script. What's happening here is this target object, the head of the snake, has its own separate script that has the controls in here, and this is what's actually the enumerations are being used for. It is grabbing the current state of the controls enumeration, the current controls enum, and saying, hey, is it in forward perspective or is it overhead? If it's an overhead, use this control scheme where it is just adding the force on these global positions, like adding it on the Z or the X, either negative or positive. But if it's not in that overhead view, else, if it's in that forward perspective, it is getting the forward and right positions of that object. So when I hold W, it'll go forward. If I hold A, it'll go negative right, because there's no forward transform dot left or down or backwards. It's forward and negative forward, right and negative right. So it's actually doing it there. And the way I have it so that it is this object, the target object, is actually just a rolling ball. So if it's just a rolling ball, it has a forward like any other object, but its forward is going to be constantly moving. This crash detection object, which I showed in a previous video, this empty object that is on the snake array, it's on like the second position or something, that is always facing towards the target object, so it always has the same forward. So when I'm enacting these forces on the target, it's always going to be forward in relation to the direction of the snake. So I left that out earlier in the video, and I just wanted to get back in here and tell you about that. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. You're probably seeing this from my Twitter account, but if not, go over to my Twitter and follow me at cyberbully20xxd. That is where I post my game development videos. If you're seeing this on YouTube, subscribe or like the video, because I'll be posting more in the future. Thank you.